He thought she was just another helpless black girl, until her father showed up, and the world found out who he really was. Tears rolled down 14-year-old Maya's cheeks as her arm throbbed in pain. The flashing red and blue lights danced on, her face like a cruel reminder that safety didn't always come in uniform. She was just a kid, a quiet, kind-hearted teenager who had gone to the neighborhood park to stand up for her friend who was being picked on by a group of older kids. Nothing violent, no threats, just words. But the moment she raised her voice to protect someone else, someone called the police, and that's when everything changed. The patrol car screeched to a stop. Out stepped a white police officer, broad-chested, heavy boots stomping toward her. Without asking a single question, he grabbed her arm. "Stop resisting!" he barked. But Maya wasn't resisting. She was confused. She was scared. She screamed, "I didn't do anything!" But her cries didn't matter. In his eyes, she wasn't a child anymore. She was a threat, and worse. She was black. He twisted her arm behind her back. Hard, too hard. Then it happened. Crack! A sound so sharp it could silence a crowd. Maya let out a scream that pierced the air, full of agony, fear, and betrayal. Her body collapsed. Her small frame shook from the pain. People gathered. Phones came out. A few whispered, a few yelled, but most just watched. Some recorded it like it was a scene from a movie. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. The officer pressed his knee near her back, pinning her down like she was some dangerous criminal. She was 14, unarmed, bleeding, crying. But he didn't stop, because in that moment, he didn't see innocence. He didn't see humanity. He saw skin. But what he didn't know was the man he just declared war against. Maya wasn't just any girl. She was the daughter of Jordan Hayes, a name he'd never heard, but one the underground fighting world knew all too well, a former world champion fighter. A man built in pain, raised in the ring and trained to never lose. Jordan had left it all behind to raise his daughter in peace. No more punches, no more fame, no more violence. But the moment he got the call, "Mr. Hayes, your daughter is in the hospital." The officer broke her arm. Something inside him woke up. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. He just stared at the wall, where an old pair of torn fighting gloves still hung like silent witnesses to his past. And for the first time in years, he put them back on. The world didn't know who Maya's father was, but they were about to find out. Not in a ring, not with fists, but with something far more powerful. Truth, justice, and the fury of a father who had already fought every battle. Except this one. Across the city, in a dimly lit gym that smelled of sweat, leather, and old battles, stood Jordan Hayes. The sun filtered in through cracked windows, casting long shadows over the punching bags that barely swung anymore. The place was quiet now. Too quiet. The only sound was the faint creak of the ceiling fan and the whisper of memories. Jordan wasn't training anyone that morning. He was just standing there, staring at the wall. Hanging on a rusted hook, like a relic from another life, were his old black gloves, cracked, torn at the knuckles, soaked in history. To the world, he was the Hammer, an undefeated underground world champion fighter, a man who could drop a giant with one blow. He was feared in the ring, respected in the streets, but most importantly, he was a protector. And when Maya was born, he did the one thing no one expected a fighter like him to do. He walked away. He hung up his gloves. He disappeared from the fight scene. He traded roars of the crowd for bedtime stories, violence for peace, championships for fatherhood, because Maya was his real victory. For 14 years, he kept his past buried. He taught her values, kindness, strength, how to stand tall without ever needing to throw. A punch, he told himself. The world is changing. Maybe she won't need to fight. But that illusion shattered the moment his phone rang. "Mr. Hayes? Your daughter's in the hospital." A police officer broke her arm. Silence. Time slowed. The words hit like a punch to the gut. He couldn't move for a moment. Not out of fear, not out of shock, but out of something deeper, older. It wasn't the pain of hearing his daughter was hurt. It was the rage of knowing she had to suffer for the color of her skin, just like he once did. He didn't yell, He didn't curse, he didn't even blink. Instead, he slowly turned his head toward the wall, his eyes locked on the gloves, untouched for over a decade. He stepped toward them. His fingers, rough from years in the ring, brushed the laces. Dust fell. Memories rose. He saw his young self, bruised, broken, bleeding. Still getting back up, he saw all the nights he fought for respect, for survival, for a name, and now he would fight for her, but this wasn't about fists anymore. This was about something bigger. Justice. He slid his hands into the gloves, just for a moment, not to fight, but to remember, to feel the weight of who he used to be. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror, not the hammer, not the fighter, just a father with fire in his eyes. He whispered to the empty gym, "You hurt the wrong girl." And then he walked out, not to a ring, but toward a city that had no idea who it was about to meet. Not the Jordan Hayes from, fight nights and headlines, but the Jordan Hayes who turned pain into power, the man who gave up violence, until the world gave him no choice. Within hours, the world saw what happened to Maya. A bystander had caught it all on video, the screaming, the slamming, the crack of her arm. The image of a crying 14-year-old girl pinned to the concrete by a grown man in uniform. The video hit the internet like a lightning bolt. In less than 3 hours, it was everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Millions watched it. Millions shared it. And millions were furious. She's a child. That cop needs to be arrested. This is why we protest. You could hear her screaming. You could see the terror in her eyes. You could almost feel her pain when her arm bent in a way it never should have. The comments flooded in. News outlets picked it up. Activists rallied. And yet, Officer Brooks was still on duty, still patrolling the streets, still wearing that badge like nothing happened. He didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't show an ounce of regret. To him, it was just another day, another report, another routine takedown. But the world knew better now. Protesters gathered, outside the police station, outside City Hall, signs waved in the air, chants echoed through the streets. Justice for Maya. Protect our kids, not your ego. Fire Brooks now. And standing in that crowd, silently, was Jordan Hayes. No sign, no chant, just fire in his heart and steel in his eyes. He watched Brooks from a distance as the officer walked past reporters like a man above the law, still smirking, still proud. Jordan didn't come to riot. He didn't come to yell. He came to deliver something much heavier. Consequences. Because Jordan knew men like Brooks. He'd fought men like him in the ring, men who thought power came from control, from fear, from muscle and violence. But Jordan had learned something deeper. True power? It comes from knowing exactly how to destroy someone, and choosing when. And in that moment, as Brooks walked past the crowd, brushing off the chaos like a stain on his uniform, Jordan stepped forward, just a little, just enough for Brooks to see him. Their eyes locked, no words, no threats, just a stare. And something in Brooks' face changed. His smirk twitched, his arrogance faltered. He didn't know exactly who Jordan was, but his instincts told him. This man is dangerous because Jordan didn't have to say a thing. His presence was the message. You hurt my daughter, and I'm not going away. I'm not backing down. I'm not the one afraid. That night, Jordan went home. But he didn't rest. He made calls. He reached out to lawyers, activists, journalists, and fighters from his past. He wasn't just going to fight for Maya in the streets. He was going to fight in the courts, on the news, and in the soul of the nation. Because now, this wasn't just about his daughter. It was about every kid who looked like her, every father who felt helpless, every officer who thought the badge made them untouchable, and Jordan was about to show the world no one is untouchable. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed. Reporters lined the walls. The air was heavy, not just with anticipation, but with rage, with grief, with truth waiting to be heard. Jordan Hayes stood tall behind the microphone, not in gloves, not in a ring, but in front of a judge, a jury, and the world. Across the room sat Officer Brooks, dressed in a suit, but still carrying the same smug grin he wore the day he broke Maya's arm. his lawyers whispered. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed, like none of this mattered, like he still believed he'd walk away clean. But Jordan wasn't there to beg. He wasn't there to perform. He was there to speak for his daughter, and for every child who couldn't. He stepped up to the mic, cleared his throat, and said just one sentence. "You broke my daughter's arm. Now let's break your silence." Then he pulled out a phone and pressed play. The courtroom echoed with the sound of Maya's scream, the sickening crack of bone, the officer's cold voice shouting, "Stop resisting!" and Maya crying, "I didn't do anything!" The video wasn't edited. It wasn't softened. It was raw, loud, real. Some people in the courtroom turned away, others cried. Even the judge's face stiffened. And when the video ended, Jordan didn't shout. He didn't cry. He turned to Brooks and spoke straight to him. "Does she look like a threat to you, or were you just afraid of her skin?" The room went silent. Not a single breath, not a single objection, because the truth was standing right there, dressed in pain and power. That moment changed everything. Within hours, clips of Jordan's words went viral. Social media blew up with hashtags, "Justice for Maya," "Break the Silence." Fire Brooks, now protests erupted across the city, not with looting, not with violence, but with unity, with signs, with marches filled with people of every color, every age, every walk of life. Maya's voice had become their voice, and Jordan's pain became their mission. The police department? They couldn't ignore it anymore. Officer Brooks was suspended, stripped of his badge, placed under investigation. But Jordan, he wasn't done yet. He looked at the system, the broken machine that let men like Brooks wear badges without accountability, and said, "Suspension isn't justice. My daughter deserves more than silence. We all do." He filed lawsuits. He demanded body cam policies be reviewed. He showed up to every city council meeting. He told the story over and over again so no one could look away, and slowly, painfully, the wheels began to turn. Because for Jordan, this wasn't about revenge. This was about change. This was about building a world where the next Maya wouldn't be dragged, broken, or ignored. A world where black children were protected, not profiled. A world where power didn't come from a badge, but from the courage to do what's right. And now, the man once known as the Hammer was no longer fighting in the ring. He was fighting in the realest arena of all, the system. And he was just getting started. Months passed. The headlines faded. The noise died down. But Jordan Hayes didn't stop, instead of walking away with silence. He came back with purpose. He launched something powerful, something that would outlast courtrooms, news cycles, and hashtags. He called it Black Shield, a youth program built for one mission, to protect, empower, and prepare the next generation. Not with fists, not with rage, but with knowledge, strength, and courage. In an old gym, the same one where Jordan once trained to break bones, now stood dozens of kids, young, black, brave, learning to stand tall in a world that too often tried to knock them down. He taught them how to record with their phones, how to speak without stuttering, how to stay calm even when someone with a badge loses control. He didn't teach them to fight back with violence. He taught them something even more powerful. Your words are your weapon. Your story is your shield. And your truth, that's your justice. Jordan didn't just train bodies anymore. He trained minds, hearts, and leaders. And Maya, she healed, not just her arm, but her spirit. The girl who once screamed in the street, bleeding and scared, now stood on stage, holding a mic, sharing her story. "They tried to break me," she said. "But my father didn't raise a victim. He raised a fighter." She smiled at the younger girls watching her, told them they were seen, told them they mattered, told them that fear was never the end. It was just the start of rising. As for Officer Brooks, he disappeared from the force, shunned, disgraced. His name was now a symbol, not of authority, but of failure. But he wasn't done trying to play the victim. He filed a lawsuit, claimed he was suffering from emotional distress, said the protests ruined his life. The internet laughed. The courts rejected him. And Jordan? He just smiled. He didn't need revenge. Didn't need to throw a punch. Didn't even need to say a word. Because when he looked around at the kids in his gym, when he saw Maya speaking with pride, when he watched young people standing up for themselves, recording, resisting, and rising, he knew he'd already won. Because this story, it wasn't about breaking someone. It was about building something, a future where Black children are seen, heard, and safe. A world where fathers don't have to fight the system just to protect their daughters. And Jordan Hayes, the man they once called the Hammer, he didn't need the ring anymore. He became the shield for his daughter, for his community. For us all, if you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our community.